Hello, my lovely people. Welcome, CTO and Mando, all over the world. Marty Party is stuck in a Marty Party bus, but hopefully he'll join us later. If not, it's just the three amigos, and sometimes less is more. How are you guys today? CTO?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm at the hotel Wi-Fi. Hope it works.
It's working great. Just hope everybody's at dinner and not not jumping online. Mando, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. What a week.
Mando, Mountain Man.
Aged a few years, but it's definitely been a good one.
Yeah, I'm going to actually, the story today, and we'll keep it brief for the team, and thank you as well to everybody out there and the audience for coming. But this one's called Fear Fades. And I do believe when you look at all the indicators, the tariff tensions, tariff traumas, etc., all easing right now. Market's going up. We have a little DCA pump happening as we speak. Bitcoin shot up $1,800. Some of the alts are recovering. Global liquidity is going nuts, up 9% year to date. We have some bullishness coming back into perpetuals and futures. More stablecoin stuff happening, more Bitcoin laws happening. In fact, we even have an agenda. I forgot to share it. These are some of the things we'll touch on today. We'll talk about some new price targets from legends like Dan Tapiero, who Mando knows very well, even pre-Raoul Pal days. The former Prime Minister of the UK had something very interesting to say about Bitcoin. Weird stuff coming out of the UK every day. Shout out to all our United Kingdom, Commonwealth audience out there. And then there's some weird stuff going on. You got a massive whale doing a big long and a big short. Sol ETH, it's a new all-time high, and so much more. Then there was also some drama about this OHM token. If you guys know, it fell 90%, but still, the chart is very interesting. A little bit on everything jumping into stablecoins. You got this new collaboration. I can't remember what they call it, but Global Digital Money, GDM or something, with Visa, Paxos, and Robinhood all trying to collaborate around stablecoins. It's like everybody wants a piece of stablecoin. Saylor, of course, buys more. NVDA plan to build a US supercomputer in the US. And, you know, the tariff thing is all about China at the end of the day. And the question is, there's some rumors flying around. What's true and what's not? You guys ready to jump in?
I'm ready.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's start with a little bit of where we are with the chart, if you would not mind, CTO. And tell us, are we recovering? Is the fear fading? Or should
Absolutely.
we still be terrified? Yeah. Okay.
Finally, this starts looking pretty good after this long stretch of trouble. We broke, just to recap, we were in this range. We broke down the range in late February, which completed double top. Double top confirms when the low between the top is breached, which happened here at the same time as the range breakdown. We got the target, downside target, which I specified as the pattern target from the breakdown, perhaps down to this support. You can see here, this was resistance, and I felt perhaps it will act as support. And we painted this target circle here, and actually price hit exactly the center of it twice. And then we've had a massive rebound after that. So I have a feeling a lot of people kind of had the same target, hope to get fills here. It did fill, and we've run it back. So right now, this looks pretty good. It's a confirmation that there was buying interest at this support, and we've made a massive recovery here. Of course, the final confirmation is that we get back into this range at 9,800. But this looks a lot better now than it's done over the past couple of weeks.
And would you call it a classic double bottom here off that support line?
Exactly. So definitely. So if we break up into the 90,800, that will really be like triple confirmation. Then we're back in the range. We have, exactly as you say, we have then completed a double bottom, because the same way as the double top confirms when the low is breached, the double bottom confirms when the high between the low is breached, which is here at 89,000. So if we're back at like 90,800, that means we have also confirmed the double bottom. We're back in the range. Probably the trend will turn up, and we're off to the races. So that's how I'm seeing this. But I'm more optimistic now than I've been, the past couple of months here since the breakdown in February. And of course, a lot will depend on the stock market, what happens with the with the tariffs from here. And I also think that gold has given a push for Bitcoin. I mean, gold has been on an absolutely enormous tear, right? No one has missed it. And I think that has helped Bitcoin as well. Maybe some people buy some digital gold along with the gold. And yeah, but a lot will depend on what happens now with the tariff war. And so we'll talk about it more later.
Let's talk about this little story here. And I know, Mandy, you look at a lot of this stuff as well. The Bitcoin spot perp gap is narrowing on Binance, which means leverage traders are coming into the game. And historically, that's been a very bullish sign. It means kind of risk on for Bitcoin. Can you walk us through what you see here in the perp market?
Yeah, I mean, we've had negative funding over a range of different timeframes kind of for a while here. Now, part of that is bearish sentiment. Part of that is kind of the basis trade we've spoken about before as well. Some people are actively shorting Bitcoin against holding spot. I think this is a good sign. It requires it requires more bullish sentiment coming through the futures market, which I think is a very, very bullish thing. I kind of agree with what CTO was saying earlier. Gold, this is what we've been saying for the last few days. Would it follow stocks or would it follow gold? I think we're starting to see the narrative form again that Bitcoin can be like gold. You've seen money printing. However you view the trade war, it seems like it's now being slightly more discounted. At least the rhetoric is being discounted slightly now. And I think people in a range of different countries around the world are looking for an alternative to fiat in this sort of destruction of globalization world, and gold and Bitcoin are really are seeming obvious.
Yeah, I like the destruction of. I like that destruction of globalization world, because we're seeing some crazy stuff happening in the U.S. And the U.S. it's as if they're trying to, and they say it openly, they're trying to reset the system. You got Ray Dalio saying the world is going to blow up real fast. Like he's hitting the panic button, has been for a while and for many years, but lately his rhetoric is out of control, negative. So when we look at what's happening in the US, this is the US Bitcoin laws. Now there's something like, I don't know, nearly 100 different pieces of legislation, or over 100 pieces of legislation for pro-Bitcoin laws all across the country, pretty much every state, whether it's allocating in pension funds or state treasuries or whatever else. This is kind of crazy. And we had some, actually for you, CTO, out of Sweden last week, some rumors that they want to stack some Bitcoin too. Can you share some information on that?
Yeah, definitely. I was very happy to read that. It's not a consensus yet. So it's some politician who push for this, which is great. But I do think the discussion is going to come up almost everywhere now. And it's funny, just a year ago, that was impossible. It was an impossible discussion to even have. But people talk about this overtone window, right? What is acceptable? What opinions are even possible, socially acceptable to have? And 1 year ago, it wasn't a socially acceptable opinion to have that you should hold some kind of Bitcoin strategic reserve in a country. Now it is. A lot of people are talking about it, a lot of countries, and I feel it has changed. And it's the first step towards actually doing it. That is at least acceptable to talk about.
And it is impressive the pace at which this thing is happening. Like ever since, you could say November 5th is pretty incredible. Dan Tapiero, over to you, Mando. Long-term a buddy of yours, gold bug, macro guru, etc. He now comes out and pounds his table that Bitcoin will hit 180K within a year. And, with an extreme level of confidence, when the world is terrified, he's like, we're going to 180. We're going to more than double from here. Tell us a bit about Dan. Tell us about his knowledge of macro and what he sees, because he's also in touch with people all over the world and how they're allocating not only just gold, but also Bitcoin.
Yeah, so Dan is like a hedge fund manager or an asset manager with kind of a background in commodities. I think he was like one of the well-known gold bug for many years, right? Like particularly in like the early 2000s and maybe up to like mid 2015, maybe something like that. And then kind of switched towards Bitcoin, and now is like a super Bitcoin bull. He also, has some bullishness for gold too, but definitely bullish on Bitcoin. I think this is just exactly how we said it would play out last week. So like the narrative here for Bitcoin is you're going to see money printing coming out of Asia for sure. China can't deal with this. There was talk about Japan basically doing helicopter money last week. And then in the US, it's still a little bit unsure. Like the Fed's, it'll take a while, I think, for the Fed to do anything, just because of there's potential inflation from these tariffs, but that doesn't mean that money printing isn't going to go up. And at the same time, there's also questions. Some of the questions about like bond yields have continued to go higher over the last week. They're a little bit lower today, but like still around 4.5% on the 10-year and just under 5% on the 30-year. That there's some questions like, is this hurting dollar power? Like the lack of dollar trade, the fact that we are moving to this less globalization world, a world with less globalization even. And that can get gold bulls and Bitcoin bulls very, very bullish at the same time. So I've thought for a while, that we would chop for 6 months. We thought it would take some time. And I actually thought the main catalyst would be potentially some of the Stablecoin / RWA regulation that would come in, which people are pointing to around August time. So maybe we'd have a bullishness like July, just before that. This last week has been the first time since, let's say, the Trump meme coin, where I felt like, wow, there's a catalyst here that can take us back up towards all-time highs. Just because I just feel as though the global liquidity is going higher, and people are less certain about different fiat currencies. And I think there's enough there to kind of keep on pushing gold, Bitcoin like gold has been. So at this exact point, if you have not been in the market, you've been waiting, patiently, I think it would be I'm not saying we're 100% coming out of this chop, but I think there's a real risk that you might miss an aggressive move here in Bitcoin, because I think there's a bit of a perfect storm happening on a macro basis that could mean it could go back up towards 100, 110K.
Yeah, I'm actually pulling up, if I can get it in a second, a chart on global liquidity versus gold. It is tracking almost perfectly. It's almost creepy to see. I'll pull that up in a second when I can upload it here. But global liquidity is also crazy right now. We'll get onto that in a second. But this is another piece of very interesting news out of the UK. And thank you for that on Dan. Actually, before we leave Dan, how confident would you be in his $180,000 call for Bitcoin if you had to give it a nod? 50-50?
Yeah, I don't know these sort of things, because obviously the correlation, it's difficult to work out when these things top out. I've come to become a much bigger believer in CTO's method, that you don't like to predict, you like to react. And my view is that we're at the point here where we could break out. If we do then go up towards the resistance levels will be closer towards like 100K. I don't know if that means you're going to 180K. And once we go past all-time highs, it's very, very difficult to start predicting where that will be. So once we go past an all-time high, which I still think could take a couple of months here, then I don't know. I can't really predict where that will end. It's always very difficult.
If I can just add on one thing on that before you go to the chart, James, one learning that I've had over all these years is that usually the biggest optimist turns out to be a pessimist in the end. And the biggest pessimist turns out to be an optimist in the end. Like when it goes up, it goes much further than, the craziest person could imagine. And when it goes down, it goes much further down, goes much deeper than even like the worst doomsday caller could ever imagine. Like no one could imagine that the coin could go 97% down or so on and so forth. And no one could also imagine that it could go that high like it does. So that's why I feel that having like a target-based model on something like Bitcoin is a mistake, because it could overshoot dramatically in all directions, in both directions.
Yeah, and it's like the old adage is, when everybody thinks something's going to happen, the opposite happens. So it's kind of interesting relationship there. I just want to share this one because a lot of people out there are asking about what about gold? And gold has been on fire. This is the yellow line is global liquidity, and the blue line is gold. Like you cannot make this up. And gold has had its best year in the last 14 years, maybe ever, as far as I can recall. And you know, even when you still take gold over the last 30, 40 years divided by M2 money supply, it hasn't gone anywhere. But this performance over the last year is something quite remarkable. So shout out to all the gold bugs out there. You made it. But I want to share this. This is the same chart, but Bitcoin versus global liquidity. The exact same chart. Bitcoin is lagging terribly. And the question is, will it catch up? And this is my concern. Everybody thinks, oh, Bitcoin's going to kick off May 1st. I believe that too, with 80% chance of certainty. But if everybody sees the same thing and thinks Bitcoin's going to follow global liquidity, is there a chance we're all going to be wrong? Mando, I'll kick that to you first because this is a very important point.
Yeah, look, global liquidity is often seen as like this top-down measure of like lots of broader assets. I don't know, because often it's linked to like the US stock market as well. I would say the highest correlations are going to be with things like gold and Bitcoin. And I still think there's a world here where stocks can go lower. Actually, like I'm not convinced that the stock market has seen its bottom. But particularly not US stocks. But I do think there's a world where Bitcoin really starts to correlate again with gold and with the global liquidity.
Yeah. CTO, what do you see? Do you think Bitcoin will catch up? Or did it run too fast, too early?
I mean, it has kind of been trading more like a tech stock than gold during this period. It was only 2 weeks ago that we saw some decoupling from the stocks. Yeah. So, of course, I hope it will start trading more like a risk-off reserve gold type asset. I think maybe now it's somewhere in between. It would be great to see. But I do think, if US stocks crash another 20% or something in like a nightmare scenario, I think it will pull Bitcoin down with it as well. So I hope that doesn't happen. I'm very curious, of course, to hear your thoughts about the tariff situation, because the way that I look at it, I kind of felt that I have to go back to the basics. If two countries are doing trade, both countries get richer. If they're not doing trade, they lose out on that opportunity. So I feel that if the trades get cemented in the end, US companies will actually earn less. While if this is just a brilliant negotiation tactic and the outcome is that there will actually be less trade barriers than ever, it will benefit US companies. US stock market will bounce 20% back, and I think it will pull Bitcoin with it and everything else. Yeah, what do you guys think here?
This is so important. I come back to kind of what we spoke about. It has to be a negotiations tactic, because when you see the stuff, like, for example, huge tariffs, 125% tariffs on China, Tim Cook at Apple just had a heart attack. So there's no way the US administration is going to kill a Mag 7 company overnight. And that same thing applies to NVIDIA, et cetera, et cetera. So what it'll happen, I think, is just carve-outs. It's like, imagine China make blueberries and the US make apples. China has no apples. US has no blueberries. They'll negotiate trade to swap one for the other. And that's what takes time, is looking at the inventory of what a nation needs versus what they have and how they can horse trade. And that's my crude way of seeing it. It's all about resetting. Think of resetting the system, resetting the trade, resetting 50 years of deficits. Mando, I see you nodding your head there. Do you agree? Apples and blueberries?
Yeah, look, I think there is obviously some negative effects from globalization to the extent that it was. I think that's pretty clear, whether that's on like the cultural backlash against it, or the fact that you tend to see higher income inequality in countries when with higher globalization. I think that's kind of been shown by the data. At the same time, obviously, this is a world which has never been richer. There's been unbelievable levels of growth off the back of globalization. There's been unbelievable tech advances over the last 60 years. So, like, I think it's some of these questions are more like social versus economic. What I agree with is that I do think it's a negotiating tactic. I think what we did kind of see is that there may be more negotiators in the room over the last week. And I think one of those is the bond market. And the reason why is because about 30% or just slightly higher of US debt is owned by foreigners. The US budget, to a large extent, is funded by Japan, China, the United Kingdom, a number of other country level borrowers, creditors. And I think what you saw there was some commentary before the walk back that either China or Japan was selling bonds, and that was forcing bond yields higher. And then whether you believe that caused the effect or not, like, it's very, very clear that there is going to be massive stress in the US if those bond yields go up to like 5, 6, 7%, because they're already paying $1 trillion in interest rates, and they've got a bunch of debt to refinance. So they can't really refinance them if they're back up at like 6, 7%. So I think what we actually saw over the last week, which is maybe good for crypto, is that people are taking the rhetoric a little less seriously. That's what I genuinely think. I just think that there was a lot of like, oh my God, this has been said and this has been said. And everyone's kind of realized that actually there is someone maybe to answer to at the end. And that is kind of like how high the bond yields go on some of these governments' ability to fund themselves. And I think that is mainly like dampened the reaction. Like even on Sunday, there was Trump, came out on Trump Social and said a bunch of Truth Social, and said a bunch of like more inflammatory remarks. The market sold off a little bit, but it kind of just rebounded. And I thought that was a good sign in that people are maybe saying, okay, there's going to be very high rhetoric and we're not going to take it as seriously as we were 2 weeks ago. And that's good for crypto.
So it's like boy who cried wolf type of thing. People are tired of listening to this, and they don't believe the house is on fire anymore, or he's going to follow through, perhaps. Would that be fair?
I just think the tail risks that people expected, that like, oh my God, he might just want to, burn the ships here. He maybe can't. And that's quite important for the market.
Exactly. And you nailed something at the very beginning of what you said, and that is, the bond market always tells the truth. And if the bond market starts to scream, it needs to be tempered down, or else the global financial system blows up. And that's what we saw here with the 10-year. Like, Besant looked like a hero 2 weeks ago when that fell under 4%. And then the Chinese started dumping the treasuries, spiking the yields. And that was probably a plan to do that, because they know what Besant and the Fed are trying to do. And they have to try and undo that to show that they do have some power too. But there's only so many treasuries they can actually sell as well. So that was a super interesting story. But let's get back to a little bit more crypto news. It was again, really weird stuff coming out of your homeland, and shout out to the people in the UK. But when I saw this one, I was like, weird. And we've heard this from the ECB and many people, like former politicians. This is the former Prime Minister of the UK, Liz Truss. I don't know how long she was in power, like a couple of weeks or something. But you said, Bitcoin is a tool for taking power away from government. Bitcoin is evil. We need to kill this thing. Or is she saying, I got my Bitcoin bags packed? CTO, I'll give you this one to you first. Give Mando a breather. What do you think of this?
I don't know her intentions, but I mean, it kind of is, right? That's what decentralization is. And so, I mean, she's right. That's the thing. And that's what why many governments, they didn't like Bitcoin in the beginning. Yeah. Because it is taking power away. If you compare with the CBDC, where you can program basically what all the citizens in the country can do, and basically you can do it with fiat as well, because all the fiat is electronic, and you can put different policies in place. You can debank people. That happened a lot in the US and Europe as well. And you can do all those kind of things. You can't do that with Bitcoin. So it is taking power away. And if that's a good or bad thing, I guess depends on who you ask.
Yeah. Amanda, your take on Liz?
Well,
What's
Liz
her angle here?
famously lost her job because the bond markets didn't believe in her budget. So not a dissimilar situation to kind of what we've seen very recently. So kind of a funny person to say this, because like there was basically the bond market didn't believe her budget, and that caused her downfall. I think I agree with what CTO said. This is true. Like, you can spin it in a positive way, you can spin it in a negative way. It is a tool for taking away power from government. I think the idea is over the last, 6 decades, that trust is slightly eroded with just sustained budget deficits, and the idea that generations to come are going to have to pay for the decisions of people right now, and there's a lack of trust in any one fiat currency. Like, as we moved away from the gold standard, it's basically allowed for unbelievable levels of credit, and on a national level, that's sometimes pretty risky. So I think it is a tool for taking away from government. I think that can be a positive thing if you're not in the government.
Yeah, I just think this image is hilarious because it looks like there's a big green candle going up behind her as she talks. Big Bitcoin candle. Anyway, but it's funny as well because we're seeing this massive divergence between what Europe is doing and what the US is doing. US is embracing Bitcoin. Europe, maybe a little bit of an antagonistic relationship. Anyway, enough of that politics. This is another interesting one here. This is from the Bitcoin Historian. And by the way, before I continue, don't forget links below for Mando, his X channel, his newsletter, etc., which is awesome, and CTO Larson, his YouTube channel. You're all watching it on whatever channel you want, but make sure you follow these legends. And happy Monday, everybody. But this is fun. This guy enters a whale, massive, double down on a massive Bitcoin long, 200 million 40x. And then it's at the same time a short ETH. What type of trade is that, Mando?
What's a trade that would have made you money for pretty much any period over the last 3 or 4 years? I think this points to the idea that people don't think this trade is done. And I think there's something to be said about that. We talk about the ETH short a lot, or like how it's underperformed. It's a story that isn't going away every single week. It's not even like a story which has a brief respite. It just kind of keeps on getting worse. I think Solana had its highest close against ETH ever, weekly close this week.
Yep, there it is.
And, Bitcoin's been doing that for a long, long time. And there was, some people are very bearish on Solana too, or like, you get hate for it as well, but it's still outperforming ETH again. It's just kind of the nature of it. There was some commentary today from the ETH Foundation that they're planning like a new roadmap for ETH, but these things can take years. So who knows what will happen in the next 3 years?
Yeah, there was a roadmap actually from Vitalik. I read in one of his long memorandums a couple of months ago that by 2029 they hope to have a solution in place to make ETH scale. And it was a little bit esoteric, but I mean, we will not be able to recognize the world in 2029. CTO, can you change the wings on the plane? Will ETH ever fix itself as a technologist?
I have the same opinion as for it's been very frustrating. I felt Ethereum did a great thing, inventing basically the whole smart contract. I mean, they didn't invent it, but they made it practically useful. The whole smart contract technology. It was a great thing. I think it's like this one big mistake that they kind of clinged on to, that you have to be able to run the Ethereum node on basically a Raspberry Pi or your laptop or something. I don't think it's necessary. And we talked about it many years ago now, James, you and I, that I don't think it's necessary. It's fine that you have a little bit higher hardware requirements and you get a better network as a result. Not everyone needs to run it on their laptop. And I think that's the mistake. And then they can't kind of fix the scalability of Ethereum layer 1, and they ended up with the layer 2, which are competitors, not the scalability solution. And only now I think they realize that. And to rework the whole roadmap and maybe go back to ideas they had in the past and so on and roll it out. It's going to take forever. So yeah, we see it in the chart. If I can show this for
yes,
a
please.
second.
Yep. Hang on a second. I got to remove this. No, this. Boom. Oh.
So here is Solana versus ETH, and it's been in this very clear channel now for, when is it? Beginning of 2024. And before that, that was when Solana ran up massively against Ethereum. So, and yeah, it made a new all-time high again here, but it basically sits in this channel. So clearly the market doesn't feel that this is changing at this point. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, has lost a lot of money on Ethereum. They felt like, it can't possibly go any lower. But that's a bad strategy to have, because it kind of looks like this. Here's Ethereum versus BTC. And a lot of people have been catching this knife many times. And it's just guessing if or when it will turn around. And I think it was unnecessary to lose so much here trying to guess when it will turn around. So the person there, the whale who longed Bitcoin and shorted ETH, just betting on that the trend continues. And I mean, I don't know if it will turn now, but in statistically for any asset, any time, not talking about Ethereum specifically, a trend is more likely to continue than to reverse at any point of time. That's just like statistics of markets. Your trend is your friend. So if the trend is down and you're buying, you're betting against the odds. And what that whale did, he did the opposite. He bet then that the trend will continue, that the Bitcoin will continue to gain on ETH, even though it has gone down so much, which makes sense.
Yeah, there's a great point here from Mr. Keyframes, and ETH and Vitalik and his infinite wisdom did spark that Cambrian explosion of smart contracts. But sometimes the inventor of something, I go back in history, I remember, I think it was Xerox, the photocopy company, actually developed the mouse. And another company developed Windows. Apple exploited the mouse and Microsoft exploited Windows. None of the technology was created by those companies, but they took a concept built by somebody else and made it better. And that could be the analogy here for ETH and exactly what's going on. So fascinating piece of insight. Let's look at some money flows, because this tells a very beautiful picture. I'm a huge fan of Sankey charts, and this is from dBridge. You can see it on X, but it shows you, I called it for years the black hole. All the users, all the money, etc., is flowing out of a series of chains into one, and Solana continues to lead the flows on the right-hand side, but the biggest drainage continues to come out of Ethereum into Solana, Arbitrum, Binance, Base, and it's quite remarkable, and that has not stopped. You can go back years now, and it has not stopped, which is stunning. Let's talk about this. There was a lot of stress over the weekend, too, with an asset called Mantra, the symbol $OM. Whoops. This fell like 90% yesterday. The world was up in arms. They're saying, what's going on? Is it bad actors within decentralized exchanges or centralized exchanges, or is it insiders dumping or whatever else? But the stunning thing about this, even after Mantra fell 90%, it still outperformed Ethereum, which is bonkers. Any insight? Mando, I know you track this stuff carefully. What do you think of this Mantra situation? Was it bad players, insiders dumping?
Oh yeah, for sure. This is a textbook scam in my opinion. But Mantra was was one of the chains in the RWA space. It was out of a team, I think, out of Dubai. As a rule in crypto, always be wary of a team out of Dubai. But there's a lot of this in crypto, right? Like coins with valuations which are high versus the revenue that they're making, or versus their apparent use. And I think the RWAs as a sector was definitely one of those, right? You have a lot of coins there, which there's an expectation in the future that they're going to be the leaders in RWA, right? And yet right now, they're only doing small things or they're like maybe helping with a certain TradFi firms come on. But the expectation is somehow that these are going to be the chains that like they turn into chains potentially, or they like dominate the number of RWAs coming on chain. And I don't know if I believe in that narrative at all. Like, I don't think any of the big TradFi firms are really going to be using that many different RWA firms, or at least giving them money that much. It's not that hard to put stuff on chain. I think the value here will go to the L1s themselves. Some of these have tried to like switch to being L1s. Mantra is one of those. But there's not a lot going on. And what happened here is that it had a very high valuation as being like an RWA chain, with like some partnerships with like real estate companies out of Dubai, and then suddenly it just drops 90%, and everyone asks, "Oh, why was it trading at $7 billion or $6 billion?" And I think the question here is that they've blamed one big seller sold it on a Sunday afternoon, but really there was just no buyer either. Like, it dropped 90%. That tells you nothing's really going on. All it was just supply control, and it had a really high valuation. There's some fingers being pointed at finance, there's some fingers being pointed at the team, the market maker. But I think the scary thing about this is there's a few different like this. You could even say there's some of this in the L1 spaces, right? Where there's nothing really going on. They have this in gaming, you have this in RWAs, you have this in lots of very high thought of narratives where they haven't quite reached their critical mass of people using them, and yet they still have high valuations. And people will be wary of that a little bit here, because this looks like a classic textbook scam. That's $7 billion in the space of an hour gone.
Yeah. Marty joined the party. Woohoo. Hey, Marty. Good morning. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Marty, can you hear me?
What's up? I hear you now.
There he is. Marty, thank you for joining. As we always say, better late than never. So thank you for that, Mando. That was great. And it's funny because RWA, there's no doubt it is a huge narrative. In fact, coincidentally, I had this prepared. This estimated growth of RWA through 2033 to grow by 32x. A huge amount across all those use cases: real estate, deposits, stablecoins, fixed income, equities, tokenization of everything, lending, credit. It's coming. It's going to be big, but as usual, the winner takes most. And sometimes when a new narrative comes in, like RWA or AI, you get all these players that just jump on the bandwagon, but there's never enough oxygen to feed all the babies. And that's a big problem. So, yeah.
What I slightly reject with the RWA narrative is, what does the firm do that does the RWA? Like,
yeah, what happens with the RWA? That's what I want to know.
Surely it's just Solana. Like, you're trading that RWA. Why does there need to be another firm that gets injected in there? Like, if BlackRock wants to tokenize something, they're just going to do it themselves. Like, yeah. What is that company that comes in and just like inserts themselves in the middle of it? These are finance companies. Like, they're just going to do it themselves. So that's the one issue I have with RWA. I think it's going to be absolutely massive. But saying somehow that like one of these companies is going to somehow get in the way of Goldman Sachs putting their assets on chain. Goldman Sachs does not need anyone to put their assets on chain, right? Yeah, they're going to do it themselves, and they're going to choose the L1. The L1 will be the winner there, in my opinion.
Exactly. So all the talk, all the hype, actually early 2024 was about that ETH would be the RWA chain, because Goldman Sachs and BlackRock would only trust Ethereum and trust nobody else. But you're right. It'll be the best, cheapest, fastest, most decentralized, most scalable solution to handle it. Marty, RWA, your thoughts?
I think RWA is going to be the second biggest use case of blockchain. I just know these middlemen like this and these dedicated chains to do it. You see, as you can see, that pose so much risk. I think they're just going to have to pick adopted, well-stabilized, decentralized chains. This is the problem. Middlemen, once again. Like, here we go. This is just another middleman that falls apart. And now all of a sudden, all the RWA, what happens to them? Like, are they in liquidation now?
Yeah.
I don't know. What happens to that stuff? Does it not affect them? We don't know. Maybe it's a good use case for determining the history of RWA, this thing that's happening. But I think RWA as an asset class is going to explode, personally. But this particular case with Mantra is very odd. Have you guys spoken about it? I think it's very odd.
Yeah, we talked about how it fell. It fell hard Mando said, obviously, one insider dumped it all on Sunday. There's no liquidity. Price fell 90%.
This guy Shane Shin sold 2 million which at the time was $15 million.
That's small.
Yeah, and that triggered other VCs to participate in a sell, and the selling of those VCs triggered liquidations, which were held on various Ethereum derivative platforms, and that caused the cascade. But that just shows you the power of, or the danger of these leveraged positions that people take.
Yeah,
once
that's
again,
crazy.
And now they're blaming Binance. I saw the CEO, that guy, the CEO of Mantra, verbally, quite angrily, blaming centralized exchanges for allowing these liquidations.
But that's what you normally do, Marty.
We could have averted that very easily with a simple transaction, right? We could have sent you some money.
But Marty, you normally blame Binance too. So
yeah, there you go. That's the problem. They're predatory. Now they own this thing, right? They own Mantra, because now they're going to buy it all at the bottom.
Yeah.
So now what happens? Do they own those real world assets too? What happens? It's a strange thing.
Yeah, I always looked at Ohm, and people were saying it was so hot, the last 6 months or whatever. And it was hot for a while because of this RWA narrative, but the tokenomics are terrible. And I don't touch anything with bad tokenomics. So let's talk about the other use case. You hit on something very important, Marty, as well. RWA, a huge use case, but probably the biggest use case for crypto right now and the fastest growing is stablecoins. And the US government is embracing it full hog. But now we have this from Masari. Visa is joining Paxos and Robinhood stablecoin consortium, the USDG. I think it's the Global Dollar Network, the GDN, USDG, whatever they want to call it. This is monstrous. CTO, you have any thoughts on this one? Or?
Yes, I have two things I want to say. Absolutely. Because, guys, if you've never tried to charge on the internet, internationally, you don't know how bad the status quo is. It is very bad. It's very expensive. It's very, if you're selling something, you're at the mercy. Someone could buy it and then do a chargeback, Visa, MasterCard. They're going to take the money back from you. You have nothing you can do. And it's you pay a lot. You pay 3, 4, 5, 10% in fees. Compare with stablecoin. It is instant. There is no fraud case. The person can't, take the money back later. And it costs nothing. It's fantastic. It is like not 10 times better. It's 100 times better. It's 1,000 times better than the status quo. It will take off for sure. The other thing that will take off for sure is the real world assets. Because again, if you haven't tried it, you can't really comprehend how bad it is. And I have tried it because I had this analytics tool where I had crypto first, all the coins. And then I thought, I just add stocks also. How hard can it be? It's just other tickers, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I had no idea. I had no idea how messy it is with all the stocks of different exchanges and trading hours and splits and reporting. And it's a mess, guys. So when BlackRock goes out there and says that, they want to tokenize it, they will make 1,000x efficiency there because the status quo is total garbage. So these two use cases going to happen for sure, guaranteed, because the benefit is enormous. And if we can figure out which players are going to benefit from the stablecoin, which players are going to benefit from the real world asset tokenization of stocks or other assets, we will make a lot of money, guys, because those use cases are going to take off for sure. And it was very interesting to hear your thoughts because I also couldn't figure out why we need another chain on top to do the real world assets.
And that's, it all goes back to what will the global machine be that handles all of these use cases? Mando, if you were to pick one, no, because then we'll be accused of being a certain channel. But literally, in the way of the world, everybody, and I'll say this again, we've said it here before, the winner takes most. So the best, cheapest, fastest, most decentralized, most frictionless, most breadth of capability in dApps will win. The question is, what is that? Mando, any thoughts on these two use cases? And can there be a plethora of players?
I actually don't. So I think how they've generally worked so far is a lot of these companies have been kind of chain agnostic, and they just view it as a funding mechanism for their own fund, let's say, that's actually really on TradFi rails. So like if you look at even some of the BlackRock things, they're now accepting deposits in any chain, really, right? And they're just saying, look, you give us the money and then we'll just manage it our own, like in an off-chain TradFi world. So they really just view it as like a funding mechanism, which is kind of chain agnostic. If you can actually start trading the assets for those sort of things, you are going to need you're going to need like a very high throughput chain, of which there's a number, right? If you're just using it as that, I would say just like for holding / taking in funds, some of them have been drawn towards ETH because of like this. They've been called it's more decentralized. So it really depends. But if we're going to see trading of these assets on chain, then it's going to have to be on these high throughput chains. That's very, very clear. Of which a lot of these like RWA chains, the reason why I kind of went at it versus even something like AI, for example, like we've had other examples, like AI16Z, for example, tried to do this with AI, but like they had a very popular open source protocol. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's not difficult to securitize anything. It's not difficult to tokenize anything. It's actually a very simple thing for a lot of these guys to do. So I don't think there's any sort of special tech that requires a middleman for any of these sort of scenarios. And that's why I think it'll just go to whichever chain has the best onboarding experience. And they may also trade on multiple chains. Like they may be on multiple at the same time.
Yeah, and that's you mentioned a keyword there, onboarding experience or UX, user experience, which is often overlooked. It was a great piece I read over the weekend, and it talked about how cumbersome it is to use other chains between the different wallets and the different layer 2s and the different fees. And it's just, if you're not crypto native, you see this stuff, it's just way too complicated. So UX is very important. Marty, tell us your final thoughts before we jump on to the next topic on what will run all these stable coins, what will run all these RWAs and tokenizations of the world. I think you're muted. Boom. Let's see if I can unmute him. Marty. Can't hear you. We've lost Marty. Anyway, testing. No audio from Marty. Okay. Marty. Okay, he'll go fix that. Let's talk about a quick next topic. There's a couple of questions here in the audience, and let me pop this up. Saylor buys again. We knew yesterday we get the bat signal every Sunday night. No more orange dots missing. And he buys another 3,500 Bitcoin. We had a little poll yesterday, and my bet was it'd be under 5,000. A lot of people had that too. So not a big buy. But the point is they have now gone up 11.4% year to date. And the magic of MicroStrategy is what he calls Bitcoin yield. So if you buy a MicroStrategy share, let him DCA for you, because every week, pretty much, they will increase the number of Satoshis you get per share. This is what they call the Bitcoin yield. And it's gone up over 9.4x since I first bought MicroStrategy in August, September timeframe 2020. So when you buy one share, now you have nearly 10x the amount of Satoshis per share. And of course, the price has gone bombastic because the price of Bitcoin's gone up. But any thoughts on this, everybody? I obviously track MicroStrategy religiously. It is, people ask my positions, that is my biggest position. Any thoughts on this one, CTO?
I mean, I have nothing more to add on MicroStrategy over you, James. You're the mastermind since day one on MicroStrategy, and just thank you for sharing it to us all here. It's been an amazing ride, and I think that to really take it to the next level, if they can create a system where people feel that they get yield on Bitcoin by in some way buying MicroStrategy shares, that would really take it to the next level. And I feel that they're not quite there yet. They have the new constructions and so on paying yield, but if they can because that's the issue with Bitcoin in a way, that you don't get yield on it. Imagine if you could buy MicroStrategy and have some kind of predictable yield through Bitcoin. That would really be the next step.
You actually have that. I'm going to give this to Mando. So what Saylor has done is created, I used to call it financial jiu-jitsu. They're trying many different ways to stack Bitcoin. But now you have a whole cottage industry of financial TradFi players that are creating leverage instruments that do create yield on top of MicroStrategy. There's a thing called Misty. Everybody's asking about Misty, is how, one guy in Dubai again, he had, I think, $4 million worth of Bitcoin. He sold 10% of it and bought Misty. And now he has enough money every month to cover his whole family expenses, his rent, his chauffeurs, all that type of stuff. So how far can this go? Basically, they've revolutionized the bond market with, Stark and Strive, STRK, STRF, and the convertibles and everything else. As a TradFi guy like me, Mando, what do you think of all this? Oh, I'm on the wrong slide. What do you think of all this craziness with MicroStrategy?
Yeah, I think the yield terminology here I've never really bought into, but I do think there's real yield that can come. Like if you have gold, you can do a lot with it too. Like it can be you can use it as collateral for a range of different things, and I think that's what Bitcoin will be done here. I do think that Michael Saylor, he hasn't set out his like full Bitcoin bank situation, but that is the real way to drive an equity valuation for MicroStrategy. I think everyone's kind of saying the same thing. It's kind of, at least in the last few months, it's gone from, this will always trade at a premium to a little bit more like, well, is he going to do anything with it? And I think he probably is. That's been communicated to him as well. I think at least by the markets as well. So I do think over the next 12 months, we'll see a lot more from him in terms of what he's going to do with it. What I thought interesting today was that MetaPlanet has also now entered the top 10. That's now 9th. So you now have two companies whose actual express strategy is just to buy Bitcoin now in the top 10. Pretty crazy.
And the fascinating thing about MetaPlanet, which I've also watched, I never got into it because there was no options on it. It was, I only trade options, but that has awoken Japan and Savers. It's the top performing Japanese stock. And they had a board meeting, an annual general meeting a few weeks ago. The previous year, there was 50 people there. This year, it was a huge hall with 5,000 people and people queuing up outside the door to get in. But that's awakening the Bitcoin narrative in a country like Japan. And maybe I think there's a Korean one already stacking following the MetaPlanet playbook. These treasuries are going to continue coming. Marty, any thoughts on this? Do you have a Bitcoin treasury yourself? Oh, still no audio. Yeah, got you now.
Okay,
yes.
I've switched to the Mac microphone. I don't know what's going on. Just back to the other thing. I mean, people must understand that everything is just a ledger. Okay, it's about ledgers, blockchain. So when you own something, it's just in a ledger. Someone wrote in a ledger on a database your social security number, the registration of the asset. When you buy something, it's just a ledger. When you trade something, it's just a ledger. All that's upgrading is the ledgers. We're just upgrading the ledgers. It's a technology upgrade of ledgers. It's not like a big thing. So like Mando says, real world assets, it's easy to register them. But trading them, you need speed, you need all the features of a chain to make the ledgering faster and more efficient. So that's my take on that, on real world assets and stablecoins. What was the question you asked me now? Go ahead.
What do you think of the financial jiu-jitsu for MicroStrategy and all the treasury companies blossoming around the world?
I think that everybody's moving to, okay, I think that right now, I don't know if you guys touched on it, so I'm a little late because of the time change, but I think there's a world war going on right now. It's not a typical war. They're not bombs like we typically used to a war. It's a financial war. It's between USA and China. It's the dollar won and who has the reserve currency. I think that there's going to be a massive move to away from fiat, unbacked, reserved value. And this goes for corporations, for you yourself, to having hard-backed reserve currencies. So it's going to be this war between gold and Bitcoin. I think the US has sort of decided Bitcoin. They have gold, we think, and China's been accumulating gold. And remember, this all stems from the fact that China went off of the silver standard. They were hoarding silver until 1933, when the rest of the world was gold. So China lost 33% of their purchasing power. Now they're trying to reestablish that. This whole trade war is about that. It's about China getting that 33% back. Now, I did the calculation. With the CNY, the USD CNY, they've already taken back 8% of the 33. So it's a currency war. It's about the currency pairs, the valuations, etc. So do I think companies are going to do this? Do I think MicroStrategy is going to do the right thing? Absolutely. I think if you can reserve in either gold or Bitcoin before fiat system changes, you have an advantage.
Yep, very good point.
I think it validates all of us collecting Bitcoin for all these years. That's what I think.
Yep.
And gold, physical gold. Go ahead.
In fact, little AI corner before we wrap. We're almost at the top of the hour. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget links below. Follow everybody in all the channels.
Yeah,
Marty.
sorry, mate, guys. I'm 1 hour behind. I just realized my time changed again. Please, Elon Musk, take away daylight savings time. It's ridiculous.
Exactly. But, we talked about the foreign exchange wars, which are fascinating. The tariff, the end game is to onshore more stuff and make the US less dependent. This is breaking news from NVIDIA to build a new manufacturing facility for AI supercomputers, which is part of what's happening. And $5 trillion of new investment is coming to the US. So, I don't know, craziness. This AI is the most important thing. That's why people like David Sachs, the crypto czar and the AI czar, is there to guide the government for the first time on these critical technologies, not just sit on your hands and watch the rest of the world take off. This is kind of coming and very big. NVIDIA. Anybody here own any NVIDIA?
I own NVIDIA. I own NVIDIA stock. Yes, I do.
Mando didn't raise his hand. No NVIDIA yet. He had a screaming buying opportunity a few days ago. So
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah,
but we're coming down here pretty heavily. That the Binance flush, it's 83,800. I don't see anything triggering this. Any news? We're in a headline-driven market right now.
Yeah, what I've noticed actually in the market lately, when the market opens, a little spike, midday slump, and then a rally towards the end, U.S. market hours. And we're seeing that pattern happen a lot across, like S&P 500 is nearly at break even right now. Yeah, it's just the midday slump.
OM is like pretty much capitulating. OM is like pretty dead. It's down in the 40s now.
Yeah, do you have any chart, CTO? OM? Tell us any sign of life.
I haven't followed OM.
It's
I
off
think
my
also
screen. OM is now down at 58 cents. It went down to under 50 cents for a while. It was a massive sell from 70. It's done.
I need to kind of go in 1 minute. So I just thought to share
go ahead.
2 observations. One is the yields. This is a 2-year yield. And we actually shared it here on the channel. We talked about it already last year, that it kind of starts looking like a head and shoulder top. Now it bounced exactly there on the neckline. And if this breaks down, I don't know when it will do, maybe months or so from here. From a pure TA perspective, that would then point to massively lower yields. And I think it could play out. Maybe Fed comes in finally they wake up and start lowering rates, and which could trigger rally in different assets, Bitcoin included, and stocks. Then just on the the point on the tariffs, I felt, was it yesterday or when was it with Apple? I felt that when he came out and said that actually Apple is excluded. Then I felt, okay, they're actually not going to do it. They're not going to blow up the stock market and American companies by upholding these.
No. So I just can't believe we've been through some of the most volatile markets in history, and we've heard nothing from the Fed. I think everybody's a little bit appalled. But by the way, on Wednesday, April 16th at 7:30 GMT, Powell will speak at the Economic Club of Chicago. That's the next time we'll hear him. Maybe he'll have something to say.
And nobody cares. So but Jerome Powell just has the same thing. He just Joe Bones the market down.
We're waiting for more data. We'll see. We'll, based on the data, we'll make a decision.
The memo has been the same for the last year, the talking points. Well, everybody, we all have to kind of roll. CTO has to roll. Mando has to roll. We'll do a few quick closing comments, and we'll keep this to exactly an hour. That's always our goal. We're exactly an hour right now. CTO, you go first because I know you got to bounce. Closing comments for the week ahead. The story today is fear is easing. Money's coming back into the markets. The perp market is going on fire again. People going risk on. What do you see this happening this week?
I'm more optimistic here than I've been for most of the past couple of months. So yeah, that's my final thoughts.
Awesome.
Marty, final thoughts from you. So people want you to talk about.
I think the Chinese thing is a bigger thing than we realized. The Chinese market is booming. They're printing money like crazy. Japanese liquidity went up $1 trillion from the 9th until today. It went from $44.3 trillion to $44.7 trillion in one day. Japan is following. They're up to $8.7 trillion, and the EU is a little bit behind. US, we don't get data except for monthly, so we don't know what they're doing. But they're printing money. Raoul Powell might have been right. We were just lagged, and we're following liquidity. Bitcoin is just running up all of a sudden, despite anything you might read. So I'm very optimistic that we're following liquidity. Yes. Exactly.
We covered that earlier. The gold price tracks liquidity almost picture perfectly. It's quite alarming, and Bitcoin is lagging. So we'll see. 80% chatter works. Final thoughts from you, Mando, before we wrap.
Yeah, like I said, what I said earlier in the show, I think this is the best shot it's had in a few weeks for me. I still prefer Bitcoin because I still think stocks can go lower in this market. But if you were waiting for a signal, I kind of feel like this is one where you wouldn't want to miss it. And I think the downside is also pretty limited. I don't see Bitcoin going below the support levels it's hit the last few times.
Awesome stuff. And me, I think fear is easy.
I think that defense of 75,000 when everything was capitulating, you remember that day this week? I wish we were all together because the fact it didn't break that 75,000, I think, was a massive milestone for Bitcoin as an asset. I think it woke people up that this is not a joke.
And CTO showed us his double bottom. No, not that double bottom, the double bottom chart earlier, which showed exactly that, Marty, that support held, which is very important. And maybe the history of Bitcoin is the night of the election, the price of Bitcoin, it never falls below that price again. And that was 69,000. You can't make this number up. 69,000. Remember that number. We'll see if that is the floor forever for Bitcoin.
I like the thesis.
Yes, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Don't forget to follow everybody. Links below on my channel. You're probably watching on CTO's channel or Marty's X or Mando's X, etc. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you all next week.
I'll adjust my clock.
Thank you, mods, too.
I'm 1 hour behind now. Thanks for having me on. 10 minutes.
Bye.
You have a good week. Adios.
Adios.